Hi there everyone, it's Jaycee. I'm excited to see you back. In my meaningful cards, sometimes I don't want the card art itself to overshadow what I write on the inside. So with that in mind, I'm sharing 3 modern and minimal Valentine's Day cards with clean lines and high impact. Keep watching to find out how I made them. Let's start with the easiest card to make. I like this one because it's a little bit more accessible to replicate with supplies you may already have if you're just getting started with card making. In this geometric elements stamp and die bundle, I'm going to first start with the coordinating die for this heart image. I keep stashes of scrap craft foam, and I'm going to use this geometric heart-shaped image to cut the craft foam. I'm keeping in mind the orientation as to not mirror the image, and it will temporarily adhere the die cut foam onto an acrylic block to make my own shadow layer stamp. Now this shadow layer stamp will coordinate beautifully with the outline geometric heart image. I know I want to stamp this image onto some craft colored cardstock, so I will use the ruby red mixed media ink for more opacity instead of the ruby red dye ink. This means I will get a truer red instead of a red with brown undertones due to the transparent nature of dye inks. I'll ensure I've saturated the craft foam enough by test stamping onto a scrap piece of typing paper. Once I'm happy with the results, I'll begin stamping onto the craft colored cardstock in a repeating pattern. My secret to well-spaced and full repeat backgrounds is to start in the middle and work my way out. I also make sure to rotate the stamp and ensure the orientation of the image is never the same throughout the background so that it is truly random. I make sure not to neglect the perimeter of the paper, even if that means I get a very small sliver of an image. It makes the background appear more complete. Now these repeat backgrounds are never going to be 100% perfect. You will have some uneven open spaces. What I like to do is fill in those open spaces with some embellishments. In this case, I will use the coordinating artist marker in ruby red to add little dots in the open spaces around the hearts. The ruby red mixed media ink is touch dry, but just in case, I'm using a scrap piece of paper to protect ink transfer from the side of my hand while adding the dots around the hearts. The last step to this background is to fill in the hearts with the coordinating outline image. I want a super black impression, so I'm taking Obsidian Pigment Ink for immediate solid stamped images. Back to the geometric elements stamp set, I'm using the geometric heart to fill in the red shadows. To help get a solid outline, I'm using the stamp conditioning eraser to rough up the surface of the stamp before adding ink and going to my cardstock. I'm right-handed, so I'm starting from the top left portion of my background and working to the bottom right. This will also help me avoid unwanted ink transfer from the pigment ink. So that's the background done. To finish this card, I'll use this scrap piece of the same craft colored cardstock and label Love 4x6 stamp set to make my sentiment. I am using my stamp positioning tool to get solid impressions onto the cardstock, and I am stamping the Love You label 3 times. I will fussy cut the labels from the cardstock and foam mount the images on the center of my background. That finishes this very easy and geometric hearts card. If you have other pigment ink or opaque inks, this color palette is really easy to switch up for your recipient. Speaking of color palettes, I like non-traditional Valentine's Day cards as well. Obviously pink and red is great and easy, but I wanted to try something new. Here is Stone Mosaic stamp set. I'm going to layer up the main image to make an easy spotlight background on my card and pair it with something that has nothing to do with hearts or flowers. I'm showing the color families for layering the terrazzo image now for an earthy palette. So I'll start with the most solid layer and stamp it with Morning Frost onto a 4 1/4 by 5.5 panel of spicy yogurt cardstock. I'm actually using the large ink blending brush to take away a lot of the saturation of the ink by pouncing the brush on the surface of the stamp. I wanted to see enough of the image to line up the subsequent layers of the stone mosaic without adding a large area of gray. I repeated inking and pouncing the stamp a few times, and on your screen it won't look like much, but in person the gray image appears just enough so that I can overlay the next layer. I'm layering up pumpkin pie, and then sand dunes to finish off the spotlight terrazzo tile. Like I mentioned earlier, I wanted a pairing that had nothing to do with hearts and flowers, so I was thinking more of a star chart compatibility. Here I am showing Splatter Constellations, and I will use this to stamp mine and my partner's signs on top of the stone mosaic image. I've stamped Libra, Scorpio cusp, and Pisces directly onto the stone mosaic spotlight in Galactic Stream. While that's drying back, I'm taking the coordinating dies to the 3 constellations, and I've die cut the images 3 times from scrap white cardstock. Then I will use a liquid glue to adhere and stack the die cuts so that I have a thick shadow image of the Libra, Scorpio, and Pisces images. Now back to the main panel, I'll die cut the constellations using the coordinating dies and get ready for a stacked die cut inlay. As with any inlay technique, it's important to keep these smaller negative bits like the space in Libra. I liked the Proof of Love segment of this sentiment from the Paint a Flower Spider Mums, and I'll stamp this directly onto my background panel for a minimalist sentiment. Then I'll start assembling my stacked die cut inlay card. First I'll adhere the background panel onto my folded note card base. Then I'll inlay the stacked white cardstock images. For Libra, I'll remember to inlay the negative triangular space as well within the stacked die cuts. Then finally, I'll adhere the dark teal images on top of the stacked die cuts. That's the end of this constellation and non-traditional color palette Valentine's Day card. This one is for you all who like to be a little bit different and break away from the traditional pinks and reds. If breaking that pink, red, and floral mold is not going to happen for you this year, I have another example for your Valentine's Day card stash. This one is inspired by Henri Matisse collages with geometric silhouettes and statement outlines. I don't have the colored cardstock I wanted for this particular card, so I took a plain white panel and ink blended sand dunes onto it to make my own grayish panel. I'm very impatient when it comes to ink blending, so fortunately the large ink blending brush helps prevent large splotches of ink, so I get a uniformly colored panel. Just for comparison, I have a panel of true white cardstock next to this ink blended panel. I want this card to be 1 layer, so I'm using the Altenew masking paper and this circle die to create this circle mask. This masking paper is easy to release from your background, but has great adhesion even on this not quite dry panel of ink blended cardstock. I'm putting down some strips of washi tape on the sides to hold my panel in place while ink blending Pastel Sunrise. This ink is from the Martian Terrain Mini Ink Cube family. I've brought the ink blended panel into my stamp positioning tool and placed 2 of the flower clusters from Vase Fillers stamp set. I'll stamp both images using Canyon clay, ensuring I get a solid impression on my card front. Then I'll line up the paint a flower carnation image in the center of my spotlight. Speaking of carnation, did you know Altenew has a new Flower of the Month challenge? All you have to do is create a project, share it on Instagram or Facebook before the end of the challenge month, hashtag Altenew Flower of the Month, and you're entered to win one of 3 $30 gift cards to the Altenew online shop. January's Flower of the Month is Carnation, and you only have a few more days to enter for January 2021. So with the outline image, I'll stamp it in mahogany bark on the center of my peachy spotlight. To finish this card, I'll take the Hello Love sentiment from Graphic Brushstrokes background stamp and stamp it in the center of my card in permanent black ink. Lastly, I'll add a lot of white splatters, making sure to mask the sentiment so that it truly stands out against the busy background. And that's the end of this modern and minimal tutorial on Valentine's Day cards. Of course, these cards are also great for anniversaries, birthdays, or just because. Make sure you join us for the new and exciting Altenew Flower of the Month challenge. There are plenty of new ideas to get you started on the Altenew blog or YouTube channel using the Altenew Carnation sets. Before you go, please like this video and subscribe if you haven't already. My Perfect Pairing series airs every 2nd and 4th Sunday of the month, so I hope to see you next month for 2 more paper crafting tutorials. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again very soon.
Hello there, crafty friend, Lydia here. Just popping in to say that you can get your daily dose of crafting tips, techniques, and tutorials just like this by subscribing to the Altenew YouTube channel. All you need to do is click on that little bell up there and you will never miss a video. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.